Okay, I'll make a start. I'm here to welcome Gareth and Catherine, who are going to talk to us about research data management plans. Gareth Denyer is a researcher in molecular biology and nutrition at Sydney University and is research data steward for the University of Sydney. Catherine Unsworth is a data librarian with the Australian National Data Service and based in Melbourne. They're going to take an organic approach to this question, and I think audience participation is required. So welcome, Gareth and Catherine.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so what Catherine and I have done is we've tried to model the sort of conversation that might happen between a researcher and people in the administration of their institution, people who would like the researcher to fill in a research data management plan for every project that they do. It's just one, and the conversation will evolve, and there'll be some little sound bites that you're probably used to hearing. And our role is not really to play the role of the researcher and the administrator, which is something we do find it quite difficult to play either credibly without getting too emotional. So we're going to just try and take a bit of an overall view of it.
Can I sort of say straight up that I'm actually taking my Anne's hat off today. Some of the opinions and things that I might say here might not reflect well on Anne, so I don't want people tweeting, "Oh, Anne said." So it's really my comments, and Gareth, I think, feels the same in terms of Uni of Sydney.
Yeah, I think we sort of figure that everybody in the audience is going to have a reasonably robust opinion on this topic, and that it's more important that we facilitate a session which brings out those opinions. Because we really do want to move forward with this. We clearly want something in place that researchers would really love to do, that they'll find tremendously useful to do, that will add value to their research, and also will make all the other portfolios in the institution happen. That the institution will know that data is being curated properly, it's being showcased really well, it's being managed brilliantly. You know, that's where we want to get to, and it's really through our collective efforts that we'll get there. So
Yep.
all the stuff here is really just stimulus material to try and get us to some form of consensus.
And the only other thing that I would sort of say is that we're really, throughout this particular slide deck, we're not talking about the technical aspects of research data management plans, but the cultural. But that's not to stop anyone from the audience talking about their technical implementation of data management plans in their own institutions. So
if you, although it's a counterpoint session, if you came here because you wanted to see a fight, then you might be disappointed.
Yeah.
Well, at least for the first 10 minutes.
yeah, that's true. Okay, so
All right.
RDMP's a multiplicity of purpose. So we'll just introduce you first to Rachel, the researcher, and Anthony, the administrator.
And if I put my glasses on, I do a little bit like
I can't see any resemblance with mine. Okay, so poor old Rachel, yet another form that Anthony is expecting her to fill out. And really, why?
Well, Anthony had lots of reasons in his little patch here. He's got, one of the key things, of course, is, as I'll say, that we needed for planning the storage space, planning the resources of the university. But I'm not sure that Rachel is entirely convinced by that answer. Anthony will also say that lots of people require it, that increasingly across the world more and more funders, publishers and government agencies and so on are requiring plans, and therefore we should just do it, because we should do what everybody else does. And we need to make sure that we can preserve all the research that we're generating, and we are incapable of doing that unless you give us an RDMP. And also, to be honest, Rachel, you're not capable of managing your therefore, in order for us to elicit cultural change at your level, then you need to put in our plans.
Well, I don't think Rachel's convinced by your arguments here, Anthony. Yes, so in terms of actually filling out this form, she feels like she's filled out this many times over. And plus, this one's actually augmented by many other questions. So where does it all end, basically, as far as Rachel's concerned? So
You don't like putting
no, time-poor researchers don't. So research data management plans as exemplifying best practice. So we hear that bandied around quite a lot. So here we are again.
So, I mean, clearly across the world, as we mentioned before, people are insisting that you do RDMPs so that you can really become familiar with all the challenges that you're going to face throughout your project. And without the existence of this RDMP, you know that nothing's going to happen.
Okay. Again, she's not convinced. Okay, she can see the benefit in, you know, seeing all the issues, well, some of the, or many of the issues that a data management plan will, you know, illuminate for her. But in terms of actually what she needs to solve in working through her research project, a lot of that stuff isn't in there because it's not actually, you know, generic. It's too generic and not specific enough to her domain. So, and besides, who actually says that research data management plans are best practice or translate into best practice?
You don't mean that you would ever lie in your RDMP. If you've said that you're going to do something a particular way, then I'm sure you follow religiously and to the letter.
But why do I need to worry? Really, seriously, you know, Anthony the administrator, you know, seriously, who is checking these research data management plans?
Well, at the moment, no one is really checking. but I have a very frightening thing to tell you, and that is that ways of checking are probably coming, and there's a lot of administrators who will love the sound of that, and there's a lot of Rachels who will not mind.
Okay, so research data management plans hold the same currency as New Year's resolutions. Yeah. So obviously Rachel doesn't have all the answers at the beginning of her project. And quite often, you know, look, seriously, research is not black and white. It doesn't always go to plan. You know, new opportunities arise as, you know, projects are progressing. And so if she's going to get through this part of the process and fill out the data management plan, a few little white lies are going to creep in there. And Anthony's response to this whole issue...
Well, Rachel, you know, really the idea is that you should create a plan, and then as things change in your project, you should go in and update it. Because I'm sure you'll probably do that every week. and I'm sure you're not going to be one of these people that, you know, maybe has a lab with 30 people working for you, and each of those people has 4 or 5 projects. So you sort of administer, you know, maybe 100 projects, and yet you've only filled in one RDMP for the whole thing. And it's dated to 2070. You're not one of those people, are you?
No, but, you know, I think Rachel has problems actually locating the data management plan that she originally completed. Yeah. So, you know, how does she keep going back to it? You know, what are the mechanisms in place? Yeah. So really what she's thinking is, you know, I'm just going to do whatever it takes to get this job done with the least amount of impost to her time and effort. And so her colleague around the corner has done a pretty good job of her data management plan, so she's just going to copy and paste. And we're also seeing a lot of researchers using boilerplate text and that sort of thing just to get that data management plan done and dusted.
Yes, we like Sally's idea. We're giving that to all of the researchers. So they can copy that one.
And again, who will know if I've followed, or if Rachel's followed through on her research data management plan. So funders and institutions require them. Well, the last time Rachel checked, the code didn't even mention RDMPs or DMPs for that matter.
And it's coming, and look, if the rest of the world are doing something, we have to do the same thing. We can't do any pushback on any insanity at all. So anyway, yes, again, frightening words from Anthony here.
The whole preemptive strike, yes. And so from Rachel's perspective, though, this is just another, compliance tool that's being imposed on her and trying to lock down her research as much as possible. The institution having control over what she does day to day, and that doesn't sit well.
But you'll tick the boxes that you need to tick, and you'll get over the line, and then you can forget about it.
That's about it. So, research data management plan completed equals managed data. Hey, tick that checkbox. Now, this has got a line here because these are, well, you'll see, quite clearly separate conversations. I've completed my RDMP, yay! That's RDN,
and
sorted.
You've done it, I'm done and dusted too. I've fulfilled all of my obligations. All of the researchers in my institution are compliant and they all have RDMPs. So, open data.
Yes.
All properly metadata tagged and everything. It's all done.
So there are benefits for researchers. Well, Rachel, again, well, we'll see what Anthony has to say about this first. Yes, he does.
So I think this is just going to make everybody more.
And, it's about the institution and it's about the funders. There's nothing in there about the researcher at all. No, not at all. So, Rachel's reaction is, really? Okay. But, she's actually experienced that managing her data costs time and money. So, and they're both resources that she doesn't really actually have. And then there's the overhead of the research data management plan to add to all of that. So she's happy to, actually manage her data, but she needs to know how, and at this point in time, the research data management plan isn't actually telling her how to do that. It's telling her the what and a little bit about the why of research data management. So she thinks that the institution needs to, do a bit of a better job on this.
I'm rather hoping that Rachel doesn't ask me for evidence that the RDMPs actually lead
Yeah,
better
that's actually...
She's been a bit slack in what else.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the institution and, well, funders and the research world, the ethos is evidence-based research. And here is Anthony, the administrator, telling Rachel, the researcher, that research data management plans are best practice. Research data management plans translate into good and better managed data and more shared data. Well, actually, where is the evidence base around those arguments?
I'm sure it's there somewhere because people would be asking for them if there wasn't the evidence.
Well, the folk at ANZ and other people have actually put tentacles out there to international folk around the nation here as well to try and actually find some evidence, some study that actually says that data management plans, actually completing one and then committing to following one, actually relate. Well, actually, we don't need to even talk about the committing because the perception is that if you complete a data management plan, you are actually doing good research data management. And there is absolutely, yeah. And there's an interesting article by a couple of American folk. Amanda Whitmire is one of them, and it's called Water, Water Everywhere, and it's a good one for everyone to read. And I could probably put the reference on this slide deck for everyone to have a look at. But it actually talks about the fact that looking at the two cohorts, people who've been exposed to research data management plans and those who haven't, there is actually no difference between the management of data and the sharing of data. So, you know...
Just a researcher to come up with evidence and studies.
But it's actually a librarian researcher, so that's an interesting one too. So, yes. And of course, because there's no evidence, you know, do these benefits actually stack up? Because they've not been tested at this point in time. So, are we listening to each other? So Rachel needs help at the research design phase of her project.
I want to make your research more efficient. I want to make it safer. I want you to be able to manage your collaborations really well. I want you, when you finish your work, at any stage of your work, I want you to be able to get exposure of your data. So I want all of those things for you. So,
But...
and I need to meet lots of obligations as well.
And Rachel also wants to be able to identify the right sorts of tools for her research as well. And she's not getting that from the Research Data Management Plan.
I would love to provide you with all the tools that you need to do your work. And you just tell me what you need. And I'll make sure that you get them. If you fill in your RDMP.
Well, I think Rachel thinks, though, that you're really more interested in her data. And it's her data as far as she's concerned. And she doesn't want to actually let the institution know what she's doing at the moment. She might let you know at the end. So,
I want that data now.
and also, Rachel needs help with her data and metadata management workflows. And again...
You mean researchers aren't experts in metadata? They don't know how to do all the Dublin core and all the other things that, you know?
Why do we need it?
Yeah, but we need to know what's coming on the horizon. We need to know what research goes on in our institution. That would be a good start.
Yeah, but one of the things that Anthony, the administrator, says is that I need to know what you're doing. I need you to complete an RDMP because I want to be able to provision the right amount of storage and be able to forecast that.
And are you suspecting that the disk space that's provisioned is not actually related to adding up everyone's requests on the RDMP?
Well, you
It's
know...
actually more related to people in ICT looking at what the usage rate is and no?
Well, what Rachel puts on her research data management plan, you know, does she actually understand what a megabyte or a gigabyte or a petabyte or a terabyte actually is?
That's what Sally asked for.
Exactly, that's right. So how much of this is actually going to feed into research support services?
And if Sally asks for a petabyte, I want one of those too.
And so again, Sally's Rachel, you've got me onto Sally now. Rachel, you know, is saying that it may prompt her to think about certain aspects of research data management, but it doesn't actually give her the know-how. And that's where that gap needs to be filled here.
Okay. So I think that maybe we've got to a stage now where we can open it up for discussion. But I think you probably recognise a few of those little exchanges from your own experience.
So I guess it might be interesting to actually get a show of hands of how many researchers or, you know, people who have a research background in the room. Yeah, there's a few of you guys here. So that's really good that we'll have that kind of perspective. And I guess the rest of you are in an admin professional type role working in universities? Yep, okay. So I did, actually before we do move on, we are actually facilitating a DMP interest group. ANZ is facilitating an interest group. And we got, at our first sort of catch-up meeting, people to put in a single word that they thought described the current DMP. And so, you know, you can see, I was actually surprised because I thought people would be going, oh, you know, they're fantastic and, you know, really helpful and all this sort of stuff. And Natasha, who is so good at, from ANZ, who's so good at kind of levelling stuff out, her word was evolving. And it's kind of like the little piece of, you know, sort of, well, I guess a salve for the, you know, the folk that really think that data management plans are in this space.
You asked for one word, and yet someone was so desperate to put in.
Yeah, well, yeah, and anti-researcher as well was an interesting one too. So yeah. So anyway, that was an interesting thing. So we prepared some questions, but we don't actually have to go with these questions. We just open it up for people to make comment. You know, does the scenarios that we've presented today resonate? Do they, they're great. They don't actually fit. So, who's first? Oh, Ingrid. Mm. Yeah, and I think that kind of beckons back to sort of what is the actual purpose here. So there's a whole range of use cases around why institutions might want a research data management plan in place. But does it fit the purpose, or that everyone thinks it does? So are you putting forward an educational tool because you want to change the behaviours of researchers? And there's a big question around whether that will actually do that job. But or is it because the institution wants that information because it needs to report on it, it needs to understand, and there may be a real sense that the institution wants to live up to improving research support services and also, building in new ones where they see the gaps. But what we're seeing is that they're collecting all of this information and then actually sitting on it and not doing anything really with it. So again, the researcher is supplying this information and it's going nowhere. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but then I guess the researcher might say, well, I can just go to person X and that can happen without me going through the process of updating my plan. So it just, I guess, depends on the institutional processes as well. And, if you're a significant researcher, you're not going to go to your data management plan to, change that so that it then triggers something with IT to get a storage allocation. You'll go directly to someone that you know who can get that job done for you. So, monster plans, a colleague of mine dubbed them, yeah. 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 So I think what you're sort of saying there is that, it's that data lifecycle approach, or that research project lifecycle approach, where certain things happen and are triggered at various milestones within that project. And so it's not a matter of the researcher having to digest and consume all of this information at the beginning, and there are certain pieces of that information that they really have to have at the beginning and are very grateful to have it, but then you just step the process a little bit more, and I think that's what you guys at Uni of Sydney are going to be.
A few people
yeah.
A bit of more of an incremental organic approach.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. But generally speaking, it's once the funding comes through, because, it's a fair bit of effort to put in, pre-funding of pre-grant allocation. Well, they're not requiring them at the moment. So that's the other sort of myth in Australia, and I'm not sure if it's the same in New Zealand. Internationally, funders more and more are requiring the completion of a data management plan and then, the lodgement of it with a grant application. But here in Australia, the ARC and NHMRC have actually not mandated data management plans. ARC have included in their grant applications the researcher can put in a couple of paragraphs about how they plan to manage their data. So it's a nice little play on words that the ARC have done there. But they aren't actually saying attach your data management plan like the National Science Foundation in the US do. So, and...
But one of the key things is that we don't really want good planning and people to feel efficiently safe, to be limited to people that are well-funded research that we actually want.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
From the health
Yeah.
service groups that can come up with that.
Yeah. 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 Yes.
The P is the P that's the problem.
It's the planning piece, and it puts me off. And I'm a policy person, and someone asks me to do a plan, and I'm like, oh, God, why? So I can imagine how upset researchers get about it. But if there's a little bureaucrat, that makes me cringe.
So I think we're actually out of time.
Oh, damn, that went really quick. Thanks, everyone, for your contributions. That was really good. Thank you.
It was really
Oh, thank
great.
you.
Thank you.